heightened terror threat compared to September the 11th.
We sent letters ahead in case something happened, something horrible happened.
Missiles deployed in Washington in a heightened state of alert. Bad news about the future value of your house. And Rooney makes his debut on a difficult night for England.
The ITV News at 10 with Trevor McDonald.
Heathrow Airport tonight, the heart of the biggest terrorist operation Britain has ever seen. Unprecedented security for an apparently unprecedented threat. Good evening. That threat was described by one government minister today as similar to the one America faced on September the 11th. So again at Heathrow today, there were tanks and troops and hundreds of armed police. There was heightened security too at other airports around the country. Nick Robinson reports on how Britain is dealing with the terrorist threat.
New York, September the 11th, 2001. Could it happen here? That's the spectre raised today by a government minister. Machines of war patrol peacetime Britain for a second day, enough to convince most of the gravity of the threat posed by terrorists. Some, though, suspect this is just another image in a pre-war propaganda campaign. The very idea provoked ministerial fury.
This is not a game. We are not dealing with public relations. We are dealing with a phenomena called international terrorism of the nature which gave us the loss of death in New York.
Death too, though on a different scale, in Bali. Today a memorial service was held for those who died in that Al-Qaeda attack 4 months ago. A candle was lit for each British victim, 26 in all. In the congregation, the man who believes and fears there may be more British victims yet.
We hope we can get through the next few days without any incident. We're confident we can. And then we will be looking to stepping this down, returning to the kind of vigilance and security surveillance that has kept us safe since the 11th of September.
Those arriving at Heathrow today can only hope he's right. Ministers confirmed that they had considered closing the entire airport, but decided against.
Those who are threatening us would have been the victors. The economy of our country, the international trade, the free transport of people would have all been completely disrupted.
And the alert has spread beyond London. Police have been checking cars and questioning their drivers on the roads to Manchester Airport. Tony Blair's ministers are sounding much more alarming than he wants them to be. These threats are, he believes, something that people throughout the world are going to have to get used to.
Terrorist arrests are not just happening in this country, but in virtually every European country and many other countries right across the whole of the globe at the moment. And the result of that is that we occasionally do have to take measures we prefer not to take.
We can't have mixed messages. When lives are at stake, it's terribly important that the messages should be clear and that they should be well presented. The action the government is taking in Heathrow is action I support. It's action I think will have universal support in the House of Commons if it's properly explained.
The Tories want a minister to come to the Commons to do just that. There may come a day when we don't blink at images like these, but it's still a long, long way off.
Nick, it's quite extraordinary, isn't it, that there are hundreds of troops and police officers all armed, and the government still has a job to do to convince us that they're not playing games.
Utterly bizarre, isn't it, Trevor? Things got so bad that the Prime Minister's official spokesman told us today, look, these are not actors in a movie, they're real people, real soldiers, protecting real people, the likes of you and me. The problem, of course, is that widespread scepticism about the government's case for war against Iraq is polluting virtually everything else they do, raising real doubts about what they say and what they claim. So bad has it got indeed, Trevor, that one Labour backbencher today, Glenda Jackson, the former actress, stood up in the House of Commons and declared, "I'm proud of my party, but I'm ashamed of my government."
Nick Robinson, thank you. More than 150,000 passengers use Heathrow every day. If they're at risk, so too are the hundreds of thousands of people who live under the flight path. Jets bound for the United States take off from Terminals 3 and 4. They fly out across the busy M25 motorway directly above the suburban sprawl of Stanwell Moor, following the M4 going west, over the village of Datchet, Windsor Great Park and the Queen's home at Windsor Castle. Here's Colin Baker on the dangers in the air and on the ground.
Fortress Heathrow, but there was only one option: close it or protect it, and shutting the world's busiest airport was not acceptable. These measures make some passengers more assured about travel. Some, though, had taken extraordinary measures, feeling the worst.
We mailed letters in case something happened. Yeah.
That's how worried you are?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And what did the letters say? What were you saying in those letters?
What would happen in the event of our death? Yeah. What we would want to happen.
Passenger safety and freedom of movement is paramount. But guns at airports to protect those who travel for fun or business seems a compulsory requirement these days. Few believe the risk will ever be eliminated. Below the Heathrow flight paths are some of the most heavily populated areas around any airport in the land. At the foot of one runway is Stanwell Moor. Mr. Patel, who runs the Village General Stores, is worried.
It's really scary, basically. When you go into the cash and carry or coming back, you don't know what's going to happen on the way there or the way back, because anything can happen.
It's in areas like Stanwell that the risk to aircraft from ground attack can be more easily understood. There is an apparent vulnerability when viewed in the context of a terrorist threat. But the airline said the number of passengers travelling was indicative of business as normal. They said the Heathrow military operation had had little impact.
In a sense, it's nice to know that the government is actually taking the threat seriously, and they've actually taken steps to improve security at Heathrow. So, taking that into consideration, I feel reasonably okay.
I think security is very good, and you're very confident that they're checking out all that should be checked out.
It's the landings and takeoffs when planes need protecting.
I'm probably about 3.5 kilometres out from the airport. That is where we will become at greater risk of a potential missile strike against this aircraft.
And that places the quintessentially English village of Datchet in the heart of the risk area. All vehicles there today, coming or going, were liable to search. But for the locals, it was very much a reasonably normal Wednesday. The cyclists were not to be deterred from their weekly visit to the local tea rooms.
Oh no, we just think, well, if it happens, it happens. And there's not much you can do about it. We ride out every week, so nothing like this is going to stop us.
Tonight, the security is unrelenting. The stakes are the highest, but there is a clear message being sent out from Heathrow by the presence of these rapid response troops. When this emergency operation was first introduced, it had been thought it could be brought to a conclusion by around midnight tonight, but that's not going to be the case. It is going to be with us probably until the middle of next week. It is a limited operation. There just aren't the resources to maintain it for a prolonged period. Colin Baker, ITV News, Heathrow Airport.
There's tension too in America tonight, already on a heightened state of alert. Troops have moved anti-aircraft missile launchers into positions in and around Washington. And Americans have also been buying up emergency supplies of bottled water, tinned food, and plastic sheets which can seal doors and windows against chemical weapons. From Washington, Robert Moore reports.
Anti-aircraft missiles are again visible around Washington amid the mounting fears of an al-Qaeda attack.
High anxiety. Tensions are rising today, Wednesday.
Ordinary Americans are being told to prepare for the worst and to stock up for an emergency. The basic advice to Americans is stark and simple. They should prepare for a disaster before it strikes. And the government has now issued a long list of things people should buy. A key part in any disaster supply kit is water. Dozens of people have been buying it in this shop, and the shelves are virtually empty. We were shopping alongside John Hedden, who was purchasing emergency rations for his family. It seems like a throwback to the Cold War almost, people preparing for a nuclear attack. But
Exactly, and we, the idea is to have enough stuff so that you can stay in your house by yourself if they have a dirty bomb or whatever for 3 or 4 days, and have enough food for everybody and be comfortable.
This store was struggling to cope with the extraordinary demand for items on the government list.
We sold a year's supply in a day.
What are people desperate to buy?
Most things they're looking for right now are the duct tape, plastic sheeting, batteries, bottled water, flashlights.
The plastic sheeting to be used to seal windows and doors in a feared chemical attack had been completely sold out. In the event of a terrorist strike, the advice is for families to go to a basement and listen to a radio for further information. The government recommendation is to buy non-perishable food to last you and your family up to 3 days if you had to live in a sealed room in the aftermath of an attack. People are now carefully assembling their emergency supplies.
Duct tape, here's the first aid kit, the sheeting, and some food that you don't have to refrigerate.
While out on the streets, police are braced for an attack that the intelligence agencies are bluntly warning could involve chemical or biological weapons. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
In Iraq today, weapons inspectors found a missile that breaches UN rules. The inspectors discovered that the Al-Samud missiles have a longer range than is permitted under the UN resolutions. Their engines will now be destroyed to prevent them being used. That discovery may help strengthen America's case for war, but it will do nothing to heal the rift in NATO. The alliance again failed today to agree a compromise about protecting Turkey in the event of a war. America wants to, but France, Germany and Belgium are still refusing. Still to come on News at 10 tonight, Nasser Hussein's anger at accusations of dithering over Zimbabwe. And the debut for Rooney, a disaster for England. The action from all tonight's games and more when we come back.
Motro. Modern. Retro. Symbology. Simple technology. Space. Spontaneous. Safe. Do you speak micro?
Don't forget Yankee.
We don't have a magic mirror, but at Cancer Research UK, we're helping more and more people survive cancer every day. Please call 0800 316 4000 and give £2 a month to Cancer Research UK, so that more people can stay together longer.
Welcome back. The England cricket captain Nasser Hussain has angrily defended the way his team has handled the controversy over their World Cup match against Zimbabwe. Hussain denied they'd dithered, saying it was a very difficult decision. He let some of his frustration show in an interview with our Africa correspondent, Tim Hewitt.
Couldn't a moral decision have been made much earlier than it was not to go to Zimbabwe?
Yeah, if it was just about a moral decision, yeah. And there's
but
a moral...
wasn't it? Isn't that the issue there?
No, there's plenty of issues. I'm not going to stand here. It's very naive of you to stand there and tell me it's just about morals, this thing. It's about politics. Should we be going out there and playing? After all this, look at these cameras around me and stuff. I play cricket. I'm not out there to go and make a political statement or stay in England and make a political statement. There was a no-win situation there. Whatever we did, we were making a political statement, and that's not for cricketers to do. There was a security issue. Players' lives and families were being threatened. That still hasn't been cleared up. So it's very easy for you to stand there with a microphone and say it's just a moral issue. But you go and speak to the players and find out if it was just that. They put that into consideration, and I don't believe the players did dither. It's a hugely important decision. Speaking to some of the Zimbabwe players themselves, they weren't sure what we should do. So don't just say players dithered. Players took it on board, a decision that they shouldn't have had to make. They sat and discussed. And I'm very angry, as you should even think about that.
Can you succeed on the cricket field, though, given all that's been going on?
Yeah, I'd say it's brought us together. We're a close unit. We've spent a lot of time in each other's company with a lot of emotion and listening to each other, and that's brought us close together. If we can play well, there's no reason why we can't.
And you can see more of that interview with Nasser Hussain on the ITV News channel right after News at 10. If you've ever felt you were being charged too much for your shopping, there's now evidence that you probably are. The Office of Fair Trading says that credit card companies charge shops such high fees that they're being passed on to customers in higher prices. That affects people whether they pay on their cards or with cash. The housing boom is running out of steam, the Bank of England said today. It's predicting that by the year 2005, prices will stop rising altogether. Here's John Draper.
The Bank of England is so sure that house price inflation is a thing of the past that it felt able to cut interest rates last week. But the bank's not saying your house will be worth less in 2 years' time, simply that the days of its value going up year after year are over.
But we believe that the peak of house price inflation is now past. Most of the numbers, I think, support that view, as do the leading indicators of the housing market that we've seen. And that house price inflation will now start to slow.
House prices have been rising steadily for a decade. Cheap mortgages recently have pushed them up even more sharply, but the Bank of England expects prices to level off in the next 2 years. Mortgage lenders advise prospective purchasers that housing will continue to be a good buy, but as somewhere to live rather than as a speculative investment.
I think the key thing for all borrowers is to make sure they don't overcommit themselves. And for the moment, we have mortgage rates at 48-year lows. So I don't think that they'll be too worried about the announcement today from the Bank of England. Clearly, in terms of house prices, they don't want house price falls, and it's much better to have a natural slowdown than for a sharp correction to happen in the market.
The Bank of England admits there's still a lot of uncertainty about the future, but officials do seem confident that house prices are not going to crash. John Draper, ITV News.
Coming up in a few minutes, one bright moment as England struggle against Australia. The new boys show the old guard how it's done, and it wasn't Rooney who got his first senior international goal. Their game plus Scotland, Wales, after the news from your part of the country.
Hello, I'm Alison McKenzie. Welcome to Central News. Our top story, the medical blunder that costs an elderly woman her life. Maura O'Reilly was in hospital recovering from an operation. She needed to be fed by a tube, but somehow the tube was pushed into her lungs, killing her. Today, the doctor who was in charge at the time was found not guilty of her manslaughter. Phil Brewster reports.
On Maura O'Reilly's death certificate, the details her family have found so hard to accept. The cause of her death was a medical mistake. The 78-year-old mother of 6 was recovering from surgery at Leicester's Glenfield Hospital. X-rays revealed a feeding tube had been inserted into one of her lungs by mistake.
She loved her grandchildren. She had 6 children. I'm one of them. She had a number of grandchildren. They were all starting to come to an interesting age. My own daughter was getting married the following summer, and the two of them were talking excitedly about that. And I'm disappointed that she didn't get to see that.
25-year-old Hiral Hizari was a junior doctor on duty when it happened. He didn't insert the tube, but nurses said the mistake wasn't spotted. On trial for manslaughter, Dr. Hizari had always denied ever seeing the X-rays or giving permission for the feeding to start.
Dr. Hizari is extremely sorry about what happened to Mrs. O'Reilly. He is conscious that the case has been an ordeal for all involved. His first thoughts are for the family of Mrs. O'Reilly, and he wishes to extend his deepest condolences to them.
In a statement, the Glenfield Hospital said the Trust offers its sincerest condolences to Mrs. O'Reilly's family. Following this incident, the Trust has initiated a new policy for the insertion of nasal gastric feeding tubes, supplemented by a Trust-wide training programme to support the policy. The family say they accept the court's verdict and have wished Dr. Hizari well with his future career. He's now moved to Scotland and is training to be a child psychiatrist. Phil Brewster, Central News.
A motoring organisation is blaming years of underfunding on the region's roads after an accident brought a city's rush hour traffic to a standstill. It happened when a motorbike and a car collided. Police were forced to close a flyover. This report from Chris Hesketh.
The scene from the sky, a dual carriageway reduced to little more than a car park. Vehicles bumper to bumper in both directions. The accident near Nottingham city centre caused traffic to tail back to the outskirts of Derby. The crash happened just before 6:30 this morning on the A52 near the Dunkirk flyover when a motorbike and car collided. The AA says years of underfunding on the region's roads contributed to the gridlock.
The system isn't up to it, and what we're talking about is a key arterial route in the East Midlands between Nottingham and Derby. Everybody wants to be in the same place at the same time. It's rush hour, and although the accident itself may have been fairly minor in comparison to other incidents we have, it will gradually bring everything to a horrible grinding halt.
The delays meant problems for people getting to work and school. Appointments were lost, Businesses said normally busy offices were virtually deserted until just before lunchtime. It's estimated the accident has cost industry tens of thousands of pounds. An investigation into the crash is underway. The A52 opened just before midday. The motorcyclist was taken to the Queen's Medical Centre with serious injuries. Chris Hesketh for Central News.
Officers investigating the death of a prostitute whose body was found 2 years ago believe they have a breakthrough. Nicola Higgins' body was found near a cemetery at Stoke-on-Trent. The 23-year-old from Colville in Leicestershire had been strangled. Police believe they have captured her killer's car on CCTV footage, and a £10,000 reward for information is now on offer.
The vehicle we can see and prove is a Vauxhall Carlton, which is blue in colour, and it does have some identifying features to the rear, a tow bar, an electric point to the side of that with a white electric cover.
20 firefighters were called to a fire at Leicester City's old Filbert Street football ground last night. Crews with breathing apparatus initially thought people were trapped inside, but no one was found. Firefighters spent 2 hours putting out flames at the old Foss restaurant part of the ground. Police are still investigating the cause. Finally tonight, Monopoly madness is with us again. Ever since we told you about the launch of Nottinghamshire's own version of the game, it seems that Leicestershire has been green with envy. At last, the county is going to get its way. Pat West reports.
The Leicestershire version of Monopoly was officially launched today at Belvoir Castle. The ancestral home of the Dukes of Rutland is the first square to be nominated. It'll take the place of Mayfair, the most expensive square on the board. The Leicestershire game will be out in time for Christmas, but the company behind it is asking people to tell them which places they'd like to see on the board.
The people who will be buying the game, the Leicestershire public, obviously we want their input as to what they want to see on the board, because after all, the board is supposed to represent their culture, and we want them to tell us what that is.
The Duke and Duchess of Rutland are flattered their home has been included.
This is our 300-year anniversary of the dukedom, and after 300 years it's nice to know we've arrived on the Monopoly board, so we're delighted.
The Leicestershire game follows the successful launch of a Nottingham version in 2001. Also destined for a square is your local Central News studios as a community chest. Pat West for Central News.
That's it from the late time. We're back with bulletins tomorrow. Now I'll hand you back to the ITV News studios.
Hello again. In a moment, Wayne Rooney makes his debut as England's youngest ever player. But was it enough to prevent disaster? First, a reminder of the headlines. Heathrow Airport is at the centre of the biggest terrorist operation Britain's ever seen. Unprecedented security was stepped up for an apparently unprecedented terrorist threat. One minister described it as similar to September the 11th. America is also in a heightened state of alert tonight. Troops have moved anti-aircraft missile launchers into positions in and around Washington. And the England cricket captain Nasser Hussain has angrily defended the way his team has handled the controversy over their World Cup match against Zimbabwe. He denied they had dithered, saying it was a very difficult decision. Now, England are used to losing to Australia in most sports, and tonight football was added to that list. Tonight's friendly ended England 1, Australia 3. The England old guard were 2-0 down at half-time, and things did improve when the new boys came on for the second half. Among them, Wayne Rooney, who became England's youngest player. Paul Davies saw the game.
If these supporters arrived in the East End hoping to see England's brightest young talent correct a painfully long period of Australian sporting domination, they were in for an early shock. 17-year-old Wayne Rooney was on the substitutes bench for the first half. Like most of the crowd, he watched in disbelief as the big Australian defender Popovic found a way past what was supposed to be England's first-choice back line. England had reason to be grateful to David James for this stop from Mark Viduka. But this was becoming a distinctly uncomfortable experience for Sven-Göran Eriksson's first string. Harry Kewell weaving his way through with embarrassing ease to score the visitors' second. This miss by Michael Owen summed up a desperately disappointing first 45 minutes for England. So Sven turned to his young lions. Wayne Rooney, at 17 years, 111 days, the youngest player to represent England. Two other debutants, Jermaine Jenas and Francis Jeffers, combined to throw England a lifeline. But there was to be no fairy tale for the youngsters. 7 minutes from the end, Emerton confirmed yet another Aussie success. Not even encouragement from the skipper and the most famous footballer's wife of all could help now, though this young man's time will surely come. Paul Davis, ITV News.
Scotland didn't have much luck either. They went down 2-0 at Hampden Park to the Republic of Ireland. After an early goal from Kevin Kilbarn, Clinton Morrison put Ireland well in control. Scotland held their own in the second half, but simply couldn't manage a fight back. And the late goal by John Hartson rescued Wales from defeat against Bosnia-Herzegovina. He managed to get the equaliser to make the final score 2-2. Twice, Wales had to come from behind. They've now extended their unbeaten run to 9 games, the best in their 127-year history. And that's it tonight. There's more news throughout the evening on the ITV News channel. We're here again tomorrow. So from all of us here, good night.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by PowerGen. PowerGen, power in good hands.
Hello, good evening. We have the dreadful duo of fog as well as frost to watch out for tonight, and that fog especially dense in places like Northern Ireland by morning there. Also some cloud and some light patchy rain stretching down into central parts. As I say, a very chilly night in places, in fact down as low as -2 in Northern Ireland, parts of the Highlands as well, and so some icy roads as well to watch out for. We go into tomorrow morning then on a drab, depressing, dull, misty note. Some of that mist and fog stubbornly persisting in a fair few places, and then that cloud with the rain pushing ever westwards. All's not lost. There are some glimmers of sunshine around. By afternoon, the skies brighten up from the east. We see cloud with drizzle out to the west. As far as temperatures go, feeling a tad chillier than today's. Good night.
PowerGen, power in good hands.
Their art is worth millions, but to us, it's priceless.
Oh, that is beautiful.
From French Impressionists to Dutch masters.
This is absolutely sublime, from the control, the skill.
ITV presents the world's greatest artists and the masterpieces they create.
Well, that's what you get for £47.2 million.
The UEFA Champions League returns, and ITV has every British game exclusively live, Tuesday and Wednesday.
Now on ITV1, 2 blokes, 1 sofa, and totally unplanned.